Hey guys, welcome back to The Readers. I hope you are having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first one is a pro-revenge story. Someone posted a story earlier that was too close to a true story I was involved in. I previously shared it as a comment in another sub and thought I'd share the real story. This happened in early 2021, when people were still mostly working from home due to COVID. I had a friend, let's call him Mike, who started getting suspicious about his wife's online activities. One of her close friends had been caught cheating and tried to implicate Mike's wife too. Mike didn't have any proof, and things seemed to calm down for a while. Mike worked in cybersecurity and was exceptionally skilled with computers and network systems. About a year later, after his wife attended her college reunion Zoom gathering, she started acting strange again. Mike called me late one night. "I don't know what to do, man," he said, his voice tight with worry. Sarah's been password protecting everything lately, even her personal laptop. We discussed various possibilities, and he half-jokingly mentioned using monitoring software. After talking for an hour, he finally said, "Just forget I mentioned anything. Don't tell anyone about this conversation, not even your wife." 2 months later, I'm checking my phone around 6 a.m. while getting ready for work. I get a Discord notification showing a link from Mike sent to what looked like hundreds of people. Family members, mutual friends, and many names I didn't recognize. Initially, I ignored it, thinking it might be spam, despite coming from Mike, who is always careful about online security. Minutes later, an email arrives from Mike with the same link and some dark comments. The email list included Sarah's workplace, both their families, friends, and numerous others. "You need to see this," his email read. "Everyone needs to see who she really is." Realizing this was legitimate, I clicked the link. It led to a quickly assembled website containing intimate photos and videos of his wife with another man. These weren't hidden camera recordings, but screen captures spanning several weeks. Mike had added captions to each item with bitter comments and crude names for both Sarah and her lover. The evidence was overwhelming and explicit. There were videos of intimate video calls, chat logs discussing future meetups, and solo recordings. What seemed to hurt Mike the most were the conversation logs where Sarah belittled him to her lover, particularly comparing their physical attributes and abilities. "He's twice the man Mike will ever be," she had written. "I've never felt this satisfied before." I immediately called Mike. He answered, clearly drunk and angry. "They all deserve to see this," he slurred. "Every single person needs to know what she did." I tried reasoning with him. "Mike, think about your kids. This could affect their lives too." As he was reluctantly agreeing to take down the site, I heard Sarah's voice in the background. "How dare you!" she screamed. "You sick bastard! My mother just called me crying." "Oh, I'm sick?" Mike shouted back. "You're the one who—" The call cut off amid their arguing. The website stayed up all day, complete with a view counter. Over 800 people saw everything. Mike had been thorough in his digital surveillance. He'd installed screen recording software that captured everything. While he was supposedly working late, Sarah would use their home computer for video calls with her lover. Mike had tracked down everyone connected to her lover, his family, his wife, his employer, and included them all in the mass message. I never learned what happened to her lover's marriage. But Mike's life took a dark turn. Sarah begged for forgiveness, promising to change, but Mike couldn't move past her recorded comments about his inadequacies. He tried reconciliation briefly, even though everyone they knew had seen the evidence of her infidelity. The marriage ended and Mike spiraled. He gained significant weight, moved across the country, and cut contact with nearly everyone, including family. Sarah didn't fare much better, aging poorly and becoming increasingly bitter. Last I heard, she was still single and struggling to date. The next one is an entitled People's Story. I work as an ER nurse at Memorial General Hospital in downtown Seattle. I've seen my fair share of entitled people over my 12 years here, but nothing could have prepared me for what happened last Thursday night. I was just starting my usual 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. night shift. The weather was miserable, pouring rain and unseasonably cold for September. Around 8:30 p.m. I heard commotion coming from outside the ambulance bay. Looking through the glass doors, I saw a shiny black Mercedes-Benz SUV parked sideways, completely blocking both ambulance lanes leading to our ER entrance. A tall man in an expensive-looking suit was standing next to the car, shouting and gesturing wildly at our security guard, Mike. I've known Mike for years. He's one of the most level-headed people I've ever met, but even he looked like he was about to lose his patience. I stepped outside to see what was going on just in time to hear the man yell, Do you know who I am? I'm Richard Thompson III. My grandfather built this hospital. I'll have your job for this. Mike maintained his professional tone. Sir, I understand you're upset, but you cannot park here. This is an active ambulance bay. You need to move your vehicle immediately. I don't need to do anything, Thompson sneered. My family owns this hospital. I'll park wherever I damn well please. I decided to intervene. Sir, I'm Nurse Sarah Mitchell. This is an emergency entrance. We have ambulances coming and going constantly. You really need to move your car. Thompson turned to me with such contempt, you'd think I'd just insulted his entire ancestry. Listen here, nurse, whatever your name is. I'm here to see my wife's decorator who had some minor fall. She's not even that hurt, but she insisted on coming to the ER. I'm not parking half a mile away in your ridiculous parking garage just for that. Just then, our ER coordinator, Rachel, came running out. We have incoming trauma cases, multiple vehicle accident on I-5, 2 ambulances 3 minutes out. My heart sank. I turned back to Thompson. Sir, we have serious trauma cases arriving any minute. Please move your car now, or we'll have to call the police. Go ahead, he laughed. Call them. I golf with the police chief every Sunday. Good luck with that. I grabbed my phone and dialed cop while Rachel radioed the incoming ambulances to warn them about the blocked entrance. Thompson just stood there with a smug smile, occasionally checking his phone as if this was all beneath him. The next few minutes were chaos. The first ambulance arrived, lights flashing and siren blaring. The driver had to stop about 50 feet from the entrance, forcing the paramedics to wheel their patient, a critically injured teenager, through the rain. The second ambulance was right behind them. I helped the paramedics with the first patient while trying to keep an eye on the situation outside. The teen had severe internal bleeding from the crash and needed immediate surgery. Every second counted. Thompson didn't budge. He just stood there, watching the paramedics struggle to navigate around his car with their stretchers, getting soaked in the process. One of the paramedics, Jim, who I've worked with for years, finally snapped. Listen here, you entitled piece of work, Jim growled. If either of these patients dies because of your stupid power play, I'll personally make sure you spend the next decade in prison. 2 police cars pulled up moments later, lights flashing. Thompson's smug expression finally faltered when he saw who stepped out of the first car. Not his golf buddy police chief, but Sergeant Maria Rodriguez, one of the toughest cops I know. Mr. Thompson, she said, approaching him, move your vehicle immediately or you're under arrest. Do you know who I am? Thompson started his routine again. Sergeant Rodriguez cut him off. Yes, I know exactly who you are. You're the man who's about to be arrested for obstruction of emergency services, reckless endangerment, and probably a few other charges I'll think of on the way to the station. Last chance, move the car now. This is ridiculous, my grandfather. Officer Chen, Rodriguez called to her partner, please arrest Mr. Thompson. What followed was like a scene from a movie. Thompson tried to run back to his car, but slipped on the wet pavement and face-planted right in front of everyone. As Officer Chen helped him up and cuffed him, Thompson was screaming about lawsuits and ruined designer suits. You can't do this to me. I'm Richard Thompson III. My family built this hospital. Sergeant Rodriguez just smiled. Actually, Mr. Thompson, your grandfather was on the hospital's original board of directors in 1962. But he didn't build anything. The hospital was built by Marshall Construction Company, and it's been owned by Northwest Healthcare Group since 1985. I did my homework when dispatch told me who was causing trouble. Thompson's face turned an interesting shade of purple. Meanwhile, a tow truck had arrived and was preparing to move his Mercedes. Don't you dare touch my car, he shouted as Officer Chen led him to the police car. That's a custom AMG G63. It costs more than you make in a year. And it's about to cost you a lot more in impound fees, Rodriguez replied calmly. Plus whatever citations we write up. After Thompson was safely in the back of the police car, still yelling about his lawyers, Sergeant Rodriguez came to speak with me and the other hospital staff. She took our statements and assured us she would pursue maximum charges. We take interference with emergency services very seriously, she explained, especially since we have video evidence from the hospital's security cameras showing him refusing to move despite being informed of incoming critical patients. I went back inside to check on our trauma patients. Thanks to our incredible ER team, both survived, though the teenage boy needed emergency surgery. His parents arrived shortly after, and when they heard about what happened with Thompson, they were livid. The next day I learned that Thompson's story about his wife's decorator was completely false. The person he was supposedly there to see was actually his mistress, who had sprained her ankle at his beach house, where she definitely wasn't supposed to be since Thompson was married to someone else. This detail came out because his wife showed up at the hospital looking for him after he didn't come home and his phone went straight to voicemail. It had been confiscated during booking. The aftermath was spectacular. Thompson was charged with multiple criminal counts, including obstruction of emergency services, reckless endangerment, and resisting arrest. The hospital filed civil charges for endangering patients and interfering with emergency operations. The teenager's family hired a high-powered law firm and filed their own lawsuit. But the real karma came from Thompson's personal life imploding. His wife filed for divorce after learning about the mistress. His law firm, where he was a senior partner, put him on indefinite leave pending the criminal charges, and the local news ran the security footage of him blocking ambulances and getting arrested, making him infamous overnight. 3 months later, I testified at his criminal trial. His expensive defense team tried to paint him as a concerned citizen who made a simple parking mistake, but the evidence was overwhelming. The security footage, body cam videos from the police, and testimony from multiple witnesses painted a clear picture of his entitled behavior. The judge was particularly harsh in her sentencing. Thompson got 6 months in jail, though he'd probably serve less, $50,000 in fines, 500 hours of community service, specifically at hospital emergency departments, and 3 years of probation. She also ordered him to take an emergency services awareness course, something I didn't even know existed. In her remarks, the judge said something I'll never forget. "Mr. Thompson, your actions that night displayed an astounding level of entitlement and disregard for human life. Your family's alleged historical connection to the hospital doesn't give you the right to endanger patients. In fact, if your grandfather really did help establish this hospital, I imagine he'd be ashamed of your behavior." The civil suits were settled out of court for undisclosed amounts, but rumor has it that Thompson's now ex-wife got most of his assets in the divorce, including that precious Mercedes SUV. The hospital used the settlement money to install additional security measures in the ambulance bay, including automated barriers that can only be lowered by authorized personnel. They also put up a large sign that reads, "Emergency vehicles only. Violators will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law." Some of the staff started calling it the Thompson Rule, though not officially, of course. Last I heard, Thompson had moved to Arizona after being forced out of his law firm. His ex-wife now serves on the hospital's board of directors and has become one of our biggest donors, specifically supporting emergency services. The teenage crash victim made a full recovery and is now studying emergency medicine in college. He says the experience inspired him to become a doctor. His family used part of their settlement money to establish a scholarship fund for emergency medicine students. Mike, our security guard, got a commendation from the hospital board and a nice raise. He still works the evening shift and loves telling new employees about that time some rich guy thought he owned the hospital. The story has become something of a legend in our ER. As for me, I still work night shifts in the ER. Whenever I see entitled people throwing fits about waiting times or parking or whatever else, I think about Thompson and smile. Sometimes I even tell them his story. It's amazing how quickly people's attitudes change when they realize where entitlement can lead them. The whole incident taught everyone involved some valuable lessons. For the hospital administration, it highlighted the need for better security measures. For the staff, it reinforced the importance of standing our ground when patient safety is at risk. And for the public, it served as a reminder that no one, no matter how wealthy or well-connected they claim to be, is above the law when it comes to emergency services. I've seen a lot of entitled behavior in my nursing career, but Richard Thompson III will always hold the crown for the most spectacular self-destruction I've ever witnessed. His attempted power play not only cost him his marriage, career, and reputation, but it also ended up improving our emergency services in ways he never intended. Sometimes I wonder if he ever learned his lesson. But then I see that new security barrier going up when an ambulance approaches, and I think about how his actions led to positive changes despite his best efforts to be the worst person possible. I guess there's a kind of justice in that. The incident also sparked a county-wide review of emergency department access policies. Several other hospitals in the area implemented similar security measures after hearing about our experience. The health department even created new guidelines for ambulance bay security, unofficially known in medical circles as the Thompson Protocol. Thompson's ex-wife later told me that she'd suspected him of cheating for years but never had proof until that night. She said his arrest was the best thing that could have happened to her, as it finally gave her the push she needed to leave him. She's since remarried to a much nicer man who, ironically enough, is an emergency room doctor at a different hospital. As for Thompson's mistress with the sprained ankle, she wrote a tell-all blog post about the incident that went viral, revealing that Thompson had promised to leave his wife for her and had been lying about his family's connection to the hospital to impress her. She ended up writing a book about toxic relationships and entitled Behavior, using Thompson as her primary case study. The whole saga became a cautionary tale in our medical community about the importance of emergency service access and the dangers of entitlement. We even use it in our new employee orientation now, though we've changed the names to protect privacy and avoid any remaining litigation. Every now and then, someone tries to park in the ambulance bay, claiming some special privilege or emergency. When that happens, we just point to the security camera footage playing on a loop in the ER waiting room. A subtle reminder of what happened to the last person who thought they were above the rules. In the end, Thompson's attempt to prove his importance only proved how unimportant one person's convenience is compared to saving lives. His grandfather might not have built the hospital, but Thompson's epic meltdown definitely helped build a better emergency response system. Sometimes the best improvements come from the worst situations. I guess the moral of the story is simple. No matter who you think you are or what you think you own, you can't own the right to endanger others. And if you try, karma might just come along and tow your custom AMG G63 right out of your life, along with your marriage, career, and dignity. That's my story of the entitled man who claimed he owned our hospital. It's become a bit of a legend around here, shared during slow night shifts and retold at staff parties. Some details have probably been embellished in retellings over the years, but the security footage doesn't lie, and neither does Thompson's criminal record. Every time I walk past that ambulance bay now, I smile at the security barrier and remember the night entitlement met justice. It's not often we get to see karma work so perfectly, but when it does, it's absolutely worth getting wet in the rain to witness it. Update. A year and a half after the incident, I wanted to share an update about what happened since the entitled hospital owner incident. A lot has changed, and I think you'll find the developments interesting. First, remember how Thompson moved to Arizona after everything went down? Well, he didn't stay quiet for long. About 6 months ago, his new neighbors started posting on social media about him causing trouble at their local hospital. Apparently, he hadn't learned his lesson and tried pulling the same "my family owns this place" routine. This time, he was demanding immediate treatment for a golf injury while there were multiple car crash victims being brought in. The difference? The Arizona hospital's security team had seen our viral video. They recognized him immediately and called the police before he could even finish his rant. Since he was still on probation from our incident, this violation got him sent back to complete his full original jail sentence. No early release this time. His ex-wife Sharon, who's still on our hospital board, told me he tried to sue me personally for defamation because of my testimony at his trial. His claim was that I exaggerated his behavior to the judge. Unfortunately for him, his own dashcam footage from his Mercedes, which his legal team apparently didn't know existed, had recorded the entire incident, including his tirade about owning the hospital. His new lawyers dropped the case as soon as they saw that footage. Speaking of the legal side, the teenager who was injured that night, Kevin, is doing amazing. He's now in his second year of medical school and occasionally shadows our ER doctors during his breaks. He told me that Thompson's insurance company finally finished paying out his medical bills and settlement last month. The amount is confidential, but Kevin said it's enough to cover his entire medical school education and then some. The hospital made some major changes too. That security system we installed after the incident, it's become a model for other hospitals across the state. I was asked to speak at several healthcare security conferences about the incident and our response to it. Never thought I'd be doing public speaking, but it's actually been really rewarding sharing our experience to help other hospitals prevent similar situations. Mike, our security guard, got promoted to head of hospital security. He completely revamped our protocols and even started a training program for dealing with entitled individuals. He uses the security footage from Thompson's incident as a teaching tool, with all proper legal clearances, of course. One funny development, remember Thompson's mistress who wrote that viral blog post? She reached out to me last month. Turns out she's now working as a patient advocate, helping people navigate the healthcare system properly and legally. She said the incident was a wake-up call about the kind of people she was associating with. We actually had coffee last week, and she's nothing like I expected. She's been volunteering at emergency departments, teaching people about proper ER etiquette and why emergency vehicle access is so important. The most satisfying part? Thompson's old law firm, which initially just put him on leave, eventually conducted their own investigation. They found multiple instances where he'd abused his position to park in emergency zones at various locations. They ended up formally disavowing him and reporting his behavior to the State Bar Association. Last I heard, his law license was suspended pending a full review. Sharon, Thompson's ex-wife, has become a strong advocate for emergency department resources. She used a significant portion of her divorce settlement to establish a fund for upgrading emergency response equipment at several hospitals in the area. She jokes that it's her way of making up for ever being married to that entitled nightmare of a man. The Thompson Rule sign is still up in our ambulance bay, though we had to officially rename it the Emergency Access Protocol for legal reasons. But everyone still knows what it really means. We haven't had a single case of entitled parking since the incident. The combination of clear signage, security barriers, and the well-known story of what happened to Thompson seems to be a pretty effective deterrent. Last week, I ran into Sergeant Rodriguez at a hospital safety committee meeting. She told me Thompson tried to get his record expunged, claiming he'd learned his lesson. The judge not only denied his request, but used his recent Arizona incident as an example of why such behavior needs serious consequences. As for me, I was promoted to ER nursing supervisor 6 months ago. Part of my new role involves training new staff members, and yes, the Thompson incident is now part of our official orientation. We focus on how to handle entitled behavior professionally while ensuring patient safety remains the top priority. The whole experience taught me something important about standing up to entitled behavior. It's not about getting into arguments or proving points. It's about calmly enforcing necessary rules that protect people's lives. Thompson's meltdown showed everyone what happens when entitlement meets immovable safety protocols and dedicated healthcare workers who won't back down. I still work the night shift by choice. There's something special about being there when people need help most. Every time I hear those ambulance sirens now, I'm grateful for our clear entrance and upgraded security system. Sometimes the biggest improvements come from the worst situations. Thompson's story has become more than just a cautionary tale. It's a reminder that no one is above the rules when it comes to emergency services, no matter who they claim to be or how expensive their car is. His attempt to prove his importance ended up proving something entirely different. That the healthcare system works best when everyone follows the rules designed to save lives. Thank you for watching. I would really appreciate it if you could like the video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. We'll see you again tomorrow.